So the next topic that we have is ecological succession. But before I start with ecological succession, let's understand what is a food web, which I forgot to mention in the topic of energy flow. Well, food web is nothing but a network of food chains, okay? And it literally looks like a web only, okay? So it's like I have grass in the middle, okay? I have the deer, which is dependent on the grass. I have the birds. Here I have, for example, here I have goat. Okay, so deer is being eaten by the lion. Birds are being eaten by human. In this case, goat is being eaten by the tiger. You know, it kind of forms a web, and this web is nothing but the network of food chains only. So this is all under the food web. Now we'll get back to our topic, which is ecological succession. Okay, so ecological succession is actually, it's very important characteristics of communities in the ecosystem. To tend to change themselves with the changing environment, whether it is their composition or functionally or structurally, but they change. Okay, so we can say it is an important characteristic of communities to change with the changing environment. Okay, this change can be anything: the change in composition, the change in structure, or the change in function. Okay, it can be any change. So it is a characteristics of community to change with the changing environment. These gradual and fair changes of a community is known as ecological succession. Okay, so the gradual and the fair changes of a community with the environment, okay, with the environment, with the changing environment, is known as ecological succession. Mention it here: with the changing environment. Is known as ecological succession. Now, the community which is in equilibrium with the environment is known as a climax community. Okay, so if you get to define what is a climax community, then you'll write the community which is in near equilibrium with the changing environment, with the, you can simply write with the environment, is known as a climax community, right? So yes, so a community which is in near equilibrium with the environment is what we call as the climax community. And a series of entire sequence of communities that change with the environment in a given area are known as, the series is known as SEER, okay, SEER. So the community which is in equilibrium with the environment, right, in a given area, okay. And what is a SEER? The series of changing communities in a given area, right? So here is the climax community and here is the SEER, which is a series of SEER, which is the series of changing communities in a given area, or you can say the entire sequence of communities. The entire sequence of communities in a given area is also known as SEER. So we are saying that the changes that happen within a community with the changing environment are being called as is being termed as ecological succession, right? So what is this succession actually? The succession is itself divided into two parts, okay? So there is something like something called as primary succession, and then there is something called as secondary succession. So I'll just rub all of it. Yes. First we have the primary succession. So primary succession is the succession that takes place in an area where there was never any type of ecosystem, okay? So you can define it as succession that takes place in an area where there has never been any ecosystem okay. So let's take an example, like we have bare rock, or you can write bare rock, or you can write cooled lava, or recently made pond, where there was never been an ecosystem, where there's never been an ecosystem. So in this case, like let's take example of bare rock. In this case, there would be lichens. Okay, there would be lichens, that would, dissolve the rocks. Okay, weathering, you can say. Okay, and gradually it will lead to the formation of low bryophytes, and eventually it will lead to higher plants, and thus an ecosystem will be established. Okay, let's take example of pond where there is water. We can say here there will be small phytoplanktons, right? Then there gradually will be lower plants, or you can say you may even have angiosperms. Okay, and then eventually you'll have a forest there. Okay, so primary succession is basically succession that is taking place somewhere where there has never been any type of ecosystem. Like I took an example of the bare rock, where lichens can come and then they can weather the rocks, and then gradually there will be an ecosystem. This process doesn't happen really quick. It's a very slow process. So do not expect, as it's happening just one after the other. It will take a lot of time, lots and lots of years. Okay, same was the case with ponds, where phytoplanktons might come, and gradually there are plants, angiosperms, and then maybe a forest also. Okay, so this was all in the primary succession. Now after primary succession, we have the secondary succession. Okay, the secondary succession. Well, secondary succession happens in places where there was an environment, but due to some reasons, the environment got destroyed. So here is what we call secondary succession, which takes place. So it is a type of succession in which you simply write succession in an area which had an environment before, and then which had an environment before and then was destroyed. Okay, so we can take example of bare lands, okay, or we can take example of a forest where deforestation was done, okay. So there was an environment before and then that environment got destroyed. So here the succession will be called secondary succession. You should always remember that secondary succession happens quickly than the primary succession. Okay, it is at a slower rate, whereas this one it is at a higher rate. Okay, so this was for secondary succession. You can take example of a deforested land. Okay. So this was under secondary succession. Now, Now we have succession in plants as well. For succession in plants, there are two types of succession. There is this hydrarch succession, and there is this Zerarch succession. Hydrarch succession happens in wet areas, and Zerarch succession happens in dry areas. Well, the motive of both the succession is to bring the condition at the mesic level, which is neither too dry, neither too wet, neither too dry nor too wet. Okay, so this is what the succession happens in plants. So if they ask you what is the hydrarch succession, it means the succession in wet areas where the sequence of changes make the conditions from hydra to the mesic